The alien marketplace was alive with color, noise, and scents that Ethan could not name. Shining fabrics hung from tall poles. Strange fruits floated in small water globes. And every step brought the smell of spices or the sound of alien traders. Shouting for customers, Ethan moved carefully between stalls, one hand resting on the small pouch of trade tokens at his belt. He had been on this station for 2 weeks, buying and selling what he could, always keeping an eye out for deals and trouble. Trouble, in his experience, came quickly in places like this. He was inspecting a table of metallic beads that seemed to hum faintly when it happened. A warm, wet touch pressed against the side of his face. Not a hand, not a weapon. Something soft. And it lingered just long enough for him to freeze in place. Slowly, Ethan turned his head. Standing just half a step away was a girl clearly alien, yet with features that somehow felt almost human. Her skin was a pale silver that shimmered in the market light. Her large, bright eyes watched him with a mix of curiosity and mischief. A thin, delicate ridge of bone ran from her forehead to the back of her head, glowing faintly, and her mouth. Her mouth was curved into a small, playful smile. She licked her lips. The crowd went silent. At first, Ethan thought he had imagined it. But no, every alien nearby had stopped talking, frozen mid-step. A merchant holding a tray of steaming food stared so hard that one of the bowls tipped over. 2 armored guards on the far side of the street exchanged quick glances. Ethan gave a small, awkward laugh. Hello?" The girl didn't answer. She simply tilted her head, still smiling, as if waiting for him to do something from somewhere to his right. An older alien woman gasped and covered her mouth with both hands. Another turned away, muttering rapidly in a language Ethan didn't know. The sound wasn't like casual gossip, it was sharper, faster, almost urgent. Ethan rubbed his cheek with the back of his hand. Okay, that was weird. He looked at the girl again. "Do you do that to everyone, or just me?" Before she could respond, a heavy hand grabbed his shoulder. "Move," a voice whispered. Ethan glanced over and saw Jarek, another human trader he'd spoken to a few times. The man's face was pale, his eyes darting around nervously. "What's your problem?" Ethan asked. Jarek didn't smile. "You need to leave now." "Why?" Ethan said. "She just don't talk here." Jarek hissed, pulling him a step back from the girl. "Do you have any idea what you've just gotten yourself into?" Ethan glanced at the girl again. She was still there, still smiling, her bright eyes never leaving his face. "Not really," Ethan admitted. Jarek muttered a curse under his breath. "She's just claimed you." Ethan blinked. "Claimed me? Claimed me for what?" Before Jarek could answer, a sound cut through the air, a metallic ring, deep and commanding. Ethan turned to see 4 guards in gold and black armor approaching. They walked in perfect step, their long spears glinting under the station's light. The crowd quickly parted for them. No one dared stand in their way. The lead guard's gaze locked on Ethan. Then, strangely, on the girl. Something passed between. Methon couldn't read it, but it was clear this wasn't an ordinary meeting. The girl took a single step forward, planting herself between Ethan and the guards. She didn't speak, but the way her chin lifted told Ethan she wasn't afraid. The lead guards said something in their language. The words were sharp, clipped. Ethan had no idea what they meant, but he felt the weight of them like a stone in his gut. The girl answered without hesitation. Her voice was soft but firm. She spoke for a while, gesturing once toward Ethan, then folding her hands calmly in front of her. The guard's eyes narrowed. Jarek tugged at Ethan's sleeve. "Don't resist if they take you," he whispered. "Resisting will make it worse." "Worse?" Ethan asked. "Worse than what?" But before Jarek could respond, the lead guard stepped closer, his spear tilting slightly toward Ethan. "You," the guard said in halting human speech. "Come." Ethan looked at the girl. She still had that strange, small smile, but now he noticed something else in her eyes. It wasn't just mischief anymore. There was a hint of possession. The guard gestured again. "Come both." 2 more guards moved in behind Ethan, not touching him yet, but making it very clear they could if they wanted to. The girl stepped closer to him. So close, her shoulder brushed his arm. She glanced up at him, her eyes bright and unreadable, and then she spoke 3 short words in perfect human tongue. "You are mine." Ethan's pulse kicked hard in his chest. He didn't understand what she meant. Not yet, but as the crowd watched in tense silence, and the guards surrounded them, Ethan had the sinking feeling that whatever had just happened, he wouldn't be walking away from it anytime soon. The air in the market had changed. Moments ago, it was filled with calls of merchants and the clatter of trade. Now, it felt heavy, like the entire place was holding its breath, as the guards formed a loose circle around Ethan and the alien girl. The crowd began to whisper again. Not the casual chatter of bystanders, but low, sharp murmurs that carried tension. The alien language was fast, syllables tumbling over one another. Even without understanding a word, Ethan could feel the meaning they were talking about him. The girl stayed close to his side, her silver skin catching the light as she moved with deliberate calm. She didn't look afraid. In fact, she looked satisfied, like she had achieved something important. Ethan glanced at Jarek, who stood a few steps away, pretending to browse a stall, but clearly listening to everything. The man caught Ethan's eye and gave a tiny shake of his head, mouthing the words, "Don't talk." The lead guard spoke again, this time to the girl. His voice was deep and commanding, like someone used to giving orders. She answered him without hesitation, her tone respectful but firm. The exchange was quick, but every time she gestured toward Ethan, the guard's stares seemed to sharpen. Ethan's mind raced. Claimed me? For what? Marriage? Servitude? Something worse. One of the merchants stepped closer to another, covering her mouth with a long, silk-draped hand as she whispered. The other merchant gasped softly, eyes flicking toward Ethan with something that might have been pity. A sudden movement caught Ethan's attention. 2 alien children had pushed through the legs of the crowd to get a better look. One of them pointed directly at him and said something in an excited voice. The other child laughed, then mimicked the licking motion. Their mother quickly pulled them away, glaring at Ethan as if he were the one out of line. The guards began moving, guiding Ethan and the girl through the crowd. People stepped back to give them space, but they didn't look away. It was as if everyone was committing this moment to memory. Jarek slipped along the edge of the group, keeping pace until he could get close enough to whisper, "Listen to me carefully. Whatever you do, don't insult her. Not in public, not even by accident." Ethan frowned. Insult her? I don't even know her name. Doesn't matter, Jarek said quickly. Here, respect isn't a choice, it's survival. He darted a glance at the girl. And she's just made you the center of the biggest spectacle this market's seen in months. Ethan's chest tightened. Why? What did she do? Jarek opened his mouth to answer, but stopped as a guard shot him a sharp look. He melted back into the crowd, disappearing before Ethan could call after him. The girl glanced at Ethan then, her expression unreadable. She didn't speak, but the faintest twitch at the corner of her lips made him wonder if she was enjoying the confusion. They passed under a large archway at the edge of the market, leaving behind the chatter of merchants and the smell of food. Here, the corridor walls were lined with banners, deep crimson cloth embroidered with gold symbols. Ethan recognized none of them, but they had the formal look of authority. The guards' boots made heavy, echoing steps as they walked. Every so often, one would glance at Ethan as though measuring his size, his strength, and maybe his worth. Finally, the girl spoke. Her voice was soft but carried clearly in the quiet corridor. "You? Surprised?" Ethan blinked. "Yeah, I'm surprised. I'm confused. I'm also pretty sure I'm in trouble." She tilted her head, considering his words. Not trouble. Different. Different how? Her lips curved into that small, playful smile again. "Soon, you know." Ethan let out a frustrated breath. "Look, whatever this is, I didn't agree to it." She stopped walking for just a second, and the guards halted with her. She turned fully toward him, her eyes narrowing not with anger, but with something sharper. "No agree, no matter. Done." Her words sent a shiver through him. One of the guards barked something in their language, and the group started moving. Again, Ethan was herded down another hall, this one opening into a large courtyard filled with tall alien statues. Their stone faces were stern, their hands clutching weapons or scrolls. It felt like walking through the gaze of 100 silent judges. The girl stayed close, every step keeping them side by side. It was almost possessive. Ethan lowered his voice. "Why are they all staring at me like I just stole something?" The girl's smile returned. "Not steal. Win." "Win what?" She didn't answer, only kept walking until they reached the massive doors ahead, tall enough for a warship to pass through. They were carved with scenes of battles and ceremonies, the details so fine Ethan could see the expressions of warriors frozen in stone. The guards took their positions, 2 on each side. The lead guard turned to Ethan and spoke in his broken human language. "You enter. You see truth." The girl's hand brushed against his, not by accident, a deliberate touch. When he glanced at her, she held his gaze, the playfulness fading into something more intense. "Stay close," she whispered. The doors began to open with a deep, rumbling sound. Ethan had the feeling that whatever lay beyond them wasn't going to be a simple conversation, and from the way the girl's eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, he suspected she had planned this from the very start. The massive doors groaned open, revealing a vast chamber bathed in soft, golden light. The air inside was warmer than the corridor, carrying the faint scent of burning incense and something sweet, almost like honey. Ethan stepped inside. The girl right beside him, and the sound of their footsteps echoed over the smooth, black stone floor. The place was huge, large enough to hold a small starship with towering pillars carved from a shimmering blue crystal. Between the pillars hung banners of crimson and gold, the same symbols he had seen outside in the corridor at the far end. Of the hall, a wide dais rose above the floor, and on it stood a long table. Behind that table sat several aliens dressed in elaborate robes, their eyes fixed on him. Some were older, their skin faded and dull. Others were young, their features sharp and proud. They looked like leaders, people who decided the fate of others with a single word. The guards halted halfway to the dais, but the girl kept walking until she was at the very front. Ethan hesitated, glancing at the guards, but when no one stopped him, he followed. The whispers began again, not loud, but enough to fill the hall with a constant hum. Every robed figure seemed to be speaking to their neighbor while keeping their gaze on him. The girl lifted her chin and addressed the room in her language. Her voice was clear and steady. She spoke for some time, gesturing toward Ethan more than once, and at one point placing her hand briefly on his arm. Each time she did, he could feel the eyes in the room narrowing, as though that small gesture meant more to them than it did to him. Finally, one of the robed figures, a tall woman with a crown-like structure of bone rising from her head, leaned forward. She spoke a single sentence in their language, and the girl replied immediately. The tall woman's gaze shifted to Ethan. And then she spoke again, this time in slow, careful human speech. "You." No meaning. Ethan frowned. Meaning of what? The woman's lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. Her act? In market. You understand. I think she just Ethan started, but the girl suddenly interrupted in. Her language, her voice sharper this time. The woman raised an eyebrow, listening. When the girl finished, the tall woman let out a short laugh, though it wasn't warm. She says, "You are hers," the woman translated. Ethan tried to keep his voice calm. "And what does that actually mean here?" The woman's eyes glittered. "It means you are bound. In our law, in our custom, there is no question. The claim was made in public, with witnesses." She gestured to the robed figures. Ethan's chest tightened. Bound, like marriage. One of the younger leaders laughed quietly at the word. The woman didn't laugh. "More than marriage, you are under her protection. She is under yours. You are joined in name, in honor, and in blood when the time comes." Ethan opened his mouth to argue, but the woman's tone hardened. To refuse her now is insult. To insult her is to insult her clan. To insult her clan. She paused. For effect is to invite challenge. Do you understand challenge, human? Ethan didn't need a translator for that. A fight. Not just a fight, the woman said. A fight to end. The hall went quiet. Ethan swallowed hard. And if I don't refuse? If I accept? The woman studied him for a long moment. Then you are one of us. You gain her protection, her clan's strength. You become part of our law, and all who would harm you must face her name before they face your flesh. The girl turned to look at him then, her eyes glowing faintly under the golden light. There was no mischief, now only an unspoken question in her gaze. Ethan shifted his weight. He could feel the weight of the stairs, the heat of the incense, and the steady presence of the guards at his back. He didn't like being cornered, and right now, that's exactly where he was. The woman leaned forward. "We will hear your answer soon. But first," she waved her hand toward a side door. "You will be shown the truth." The guards moved. Again, this time directing him and the girl toward the smaller doorway on the left side of the hall. The heavy curtains parted, and Ethan stepped into a dim passage lit by flickering blue lanterns as they walked. The girl finally spoke in broken, human language. "Do not be afraid." Ethan let out a short, humorless laugh. Too late. She tilted her head, her silver hair catching the lantern light. "You will see. You will understand." "What exactly am I going to see?" he asked, her lips curved into that same small smile she'd given him in the market. "Why you cannot leave." The passage began to slope downward, and Ethan realized they were heading deeper into the structure. Somewhere below, he could hear a faint hum, mechanical, steady, almost like a heartbeat. Whatever truth they were about to show him, it wasn't going to make his life simpler. And judging from the way the girl's fingers brushed his arm again, it was a truth she wanted him to accept, whether he understood it yet or not. The downward passage ended in a round chamber lit by hanging spheres of pale light. The air here felt different, cooler, but heavy, like it carried the weight of centuries. The walls were covered in carvings, each one telling a story in symbols. And scenes. Ethan slowed, his eyes scanning the walls. He saw alien figures standing in crowds, heads bowed toward a single couple in the center. The couple's foreheads touched, and their hands were joined. Around them, the carved crowd seemed to glow, lines of energy flowing from the couple outward like ripples in water. The girl moved to stand beside him. She didn't speak right away, just let him take in the carvings. Then she touched one of the figures with her fingers, tracing the lines that linked it to the others. "This," she said in broken human speech. "Our binding." "Binding?" Ethan echoed. She nodded. Older than war. Older than stars travel." Ethan turned toward her. This is what you did to me. That face-lick thing. Her lips pressed together like she was trying not to laugh. Not just, it is, claim, it is, promise, it is, law. A soft shuffle of footsteps made Ethan turn. The tall woman from the hall, the one with the crown-like bone crest, had entered the chamber. The guard stayed at the doorway while she approached, her long robe sweeping over the stone floor. She spoke in her own language first, her tone calm but edged with authority. Then she switched to human tongue. What she did in the market was not play, it was binding. Before witnesses. Before your kind's law means nothing here or law holds. Ethan crossed his arms. So what you're saying, I'm married to her now. The woman's brow furrowed slightly, as if the word married was too small for what she meant. It is more than your marriage. It is protection. It is alliance. When one makes the claim, their bloodline joins with yours in the eyes of all clans. You cannot be challenged without her standing with you. You cannot be touched without her name defending you. Ethan gave a dry laugh.
Sounds possessive?
The woman's eyes hardened. It is sacred. The girl stepped closer to him, her silver skin almost brushing his arm. You. Safe now. Before? Not. Ethan frowned. Safe from what? The woman answered instead. This market, this station. Not all here welcome your kind. Humans are new, weak in numbers. Easy prey. Many would take from you, or remove you. The girl's eyes dropped slightly. I stopped them. Ethan studied her, suspicion mixing with confusion. By licking my face in public. Now the girl did laugh a soft, almost musical sound. Yes, the woman stepped forward, gesturing toward the carvings again. Do you see? In our oldest tales, the binding is unbreakable. It is witnessed by the people, sealed by touch and scent. Once done, even a leader cannot undo it without shaming the claimant's bloodline. Ethan glanced at the girl. So if I wanted out? The woman's gaze sharpened. Then she would bear the shame. Her family would lose honor, and someone would challenge you for the insult. That challenge would be final. Ethan swallowed. Final didn't need translation. The girl looked up at him. For the first time since the market, there was no playfulness in her expression, a quiet seriousness. You, stay, please. Ethan didn't answer right away. He looked. Around the chamber, at the carvings and the symbols, at the history written into every line. The hum he'd heard earlier was louder now. And he realized it came from the walls themselves. An old, constant energy, like the heartbeat of their tradition. Finally, he spoke. Why me? The girl hesitated, glancing once at the woman before, answering, because. They watch me. They want, take me. She tapped her chest. If I bind with human, law protects me. No one take me without war. Ethan's brows drew together. So this isn't just about me, it's about you staying alive. She nodded slowly. The woman added, her clan is powerful, but not untouchable. She has enemies. And some think taking her would weaken her people. You were her shield the moment she touched you. Ethan stared at the girl, searching her eyes. You could have warned me. She tilted her head, almost sadly. If I warn, you run. He had no answer to that. The woman turned to leave. Think on this, human. Your choice is simple: accept the binding and live under her protection, or reject it and live only as long as your strength can carry you. The girl waited until the woman was gone before stepping even closer. I not lie, she whispered. I choose you. Ethan exhaled slowly, his thoughts tangled between fear, anger, something else he didn't want to name. For the first time since the market, he understood this wasn't some strange alien prank. This was survival. Hers, and maybe now. His ***, the tall woman's words still echoed in Ethan's mind as he was led back to the great hall. Accept the binding and live. Or reject it and fight for your life. He didn't like either choice. The girl walked beside him, her steps calm. Her expression unreadable. The golden light from the hall's high windows caught on her silver skin, making her look almost unreal. Ethan wondered if she was as confident as she looked, or if she was just better at hiding fear than he was. The robed leaders were still there when they returned, their eyes following his every step. The crowd in the gallery above had grown larger. More faces leaned over the balcony, eager to watch. Word of what happened in the market had clearly spread. The tall woman raised her hand for silence. The low chatter died at once. She stood, her robe flowing like liquid as she descended the dais steps. "It is time," she said in her careful human speech. "You will speak your answer before all hear." Ethan glanced at the girl. She was watching him, but not with the same playful smile she'd worn earlier. Now there was something heavier in her gaze, a warning, maybe, or hope. He stepped forward, his heart beating faster. "And if I say no?" A murmur ran through the hall. The tall woman didn't look angry, but her tone cooled. "Then the insult is made. And when an insult is made, there must be challenge." "Challenge," Ethan repeated, as in a fight. "Not a fight," the woman corrected, approving. "To enter, one leaves." The words landed in his chest like a stone. The girl moved suddenly, stepping between him and the woman. She spoke quickly in her language, her voice sharp enough to make even the guards shift uneasily. The woman let her finish, then shook her head slowly. "The claim was public," the woman said. "If he refuses, the old law cannot be stopped, not even by you." The girl turned to Ethan. "If you say no, they kill you." Ethan's jaw tightened. "And if I say yes, I'm stuck in this binding forever." She nodded, her eyes softening just slightly. "Forever, but safe." It would be easier if she had been cruel, if she looked like she was manipulating him. But the way she said safe, it carried more weight than a simple word. It was almost pleading. Ethan looked back at the crowd. Several aliens there didn't even bother to hide their eagerness. A few warriors in armor were already sizing him up, their eyes glittering with the promise of an easy kill. If he refused, one of them would step forward. He'd seen enough of alien duels to know what that meant: fast, brutal, and public. Still, something in him rebelled at the idea of being forced into anything. "And if I win this challenge?" he asked. The woman gave a small, humorless smile. "Then you keep your life. But you will still leave here with no protection. And many more will come for you later." So winning once wouldn't solve anything, it would just delay the next fight. The girl stepped closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "If you stay with me, no one can touch you. No one can take you." Ethan's brow furrowed. "You mean take you?" Her gaze flickered away for just a second before returning. Both, for a moment, neither spoke. The weight of the silence in the hall pressed down on him. Finally, Ethan turned back to the tall woman. "If I say no, how soon does this challenge happen?" The woman's answer was immediate. "Now." The crowd stirred at the word. Somewhere above, someone shouted in the alien tongue, and the sound was answered by several more voices. The energy in the room shifted: anticipation, bloodlust, excitement. Ethan could almost see the future, the ring of the duel, the roar of the spectators, and his body lying broken on the stone. The girl touched his arm again, firm this time. Almost desperate. "Say yes. Not for me. For you." Ugh. Ethan looked into her eyes, searching for any sign of a lie. But what he saw there wasn't deceit, was fear. Not fear for herself, but for him. The tall woman straightened. "We wait for your word, human." Hush. Ethan hesitated, the words on the edge of his tongue. Part of him wanted to spit out, "No, just," to prove he couldn't be forced. But another part, the part that had survived Backley deals, dangerous ports, and shady stations, knew when the odds were stacked too high. If he refused now, he might win the fight, or he might not. But either way, it would mark him as prey for the rest of his time here. He took a slow breath, his eyes still locked on the girl. She didn't speak, but her hand on his arm tightened. A silent anchor holding him in place. The hall waited, and Ethan knew that whatever choice he made here, it would change his life forever. Asterisk, the tall woman gave a slight nod, and the tension in the hall eased just a little. The challenge would not happen today. The robed leaders began to speak among themselves. Voices low, glances flicking toward Ethan and the girl. Guards moved forward, guiding them out of the main chamber. The huge doors closed behind them with a deep, final thud. The sudden quiet was almost unnerving. Ethan walked beside the girl through a side corridor, lined with narrow windows. Beyond them, the alien city spread out in tiers of glowing streets and tall spires. He had no idea where they were taking him. Finally, the girl spoke. "You? Angry?" Ethan didn't look at her. "I'm not exactly thrilled about being claimed like property in front of an audience, if that's what you mean." She was silent for a moment. "Not property. Different." "Then explain it," he said, stopping mid-step. "No games. No, you will see. I want to know why you did it." The guards ahead of them slowed but didn't interfere. The girl turned to face him fully. Her eyes weren't playful now. They were serious, almost heavy. "I choose you. Because you are not from here," she said slowly, struggling with the human words. "Because no clan here can touch you without touching my clan's law." Ethan frowned. "So, I'm some kind of loophole?" She nodded once. "Yes, loophole. Strong one. If I choose alien mate, enemies cannot take me, cannot make war, without breaking treaty with your kind." Ethan's brow furrowed. "Enemies? You mean other clans?" Her voice lowered. 3 clans. All want me, not for love, for power. My bloodline is old. My father, gone. My brothers, gone. Only me now. It hit him then. She wasn't just someone from the market. She was important. Maybe too important. "And if one of them takes you?" Ethan asked quietly. Her gaze hardened. "Then my clan dies." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of the city beyond the windows seemed distant. Ethan let out a breath. "So this wasn't random. You were watching me." She hesitated, then nodded. "I saw you before, in market. Oh, you did not bow to rich merchants. You pushed back when they cheat. You look not afraid." Ethan gave a dry laugh. "I'm afraid now." That drew the smallest flicker of a smile from her, but it faded quickly. I needed someone who would not give in, and someone no one here owns. Ethan's mind turned over her words. If what she said was true, then her playful act in the market wasn't about him at all, was about protecting herself from something much bigger. And now he was caught in the middle of it. "So what happens now?" he asked. "Just yours, forever." She tilted her head. "If you want, yes. If you not want, you leave. But you die." "Not much of a choice," Ethan muttered. The guards led them to a smaller chamber with soft lighting and low cushions. The air was scented with something floral. Calming, but it didn't calm him. The girl gestured for him to sit. He stayed standing. "I need the whole truth, no half answers." She sat on one of the cushions, her posture straight, her hands folded neatly in her lap. The truth. She took a slow breath, as if deciding how much to tell. The truth is, I am not only my clan's last child, I am also. Promised, Ethan. Froze. Promised? To who? Her eyes dropped. To the son of a warlord. He will take my clan's land. My people. Me, binding to you. Breaks his claim. Ethan's pulse quickened. So this isn't just politics. This is survival. She met his gaze again. Yes, you are my shield, and I will be yours. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, pacing a few steps. He didn't like being manipulated, but he also couldn't ignore what she was saying. If she was telling the truth, walking away from her wouldn't just put him in danger, it might hand her over to someone far worse. He stopped pacing and looked at her. And what do you get if I stay? Her answer was simple. I live. Something about the way she said, it's so plain, so certain, cut through his frustration. He lowered himself onto the cushion across from her. And what do I get? She thought for a moment. My clan, my name, my warriors. No one will harm you. No one will take from you. Even other humans here will bow to my claim. He gave a small, humorless smile. Sounds like you've planned this for a while. Her eyes softened. I hoped, but I did not know if I would find the right one. Ethan leaned back slightly, his mind still tangled with questions. And if I say yes, it's real. Number? Going back? Her voice was steady. Yes, forever. He studied her for a long moment. There was no arrogance in her tone now. No mischief, just the truth as she saw it. For the first time since the market, Ethan realized he might not be the only one trapped by this choice. The next morning, the Great Hall was even more crowded than before. Word had spread. Every balcony, every seat, every shadowed corner was filled with onlookers. Warriors stood with their hands resting on the hilts of long curved blades. Merchants whispered behind jeweled hands. Elders sat with their eyes half closed, pretending to be calm, but Ethan could feel the tension in the air like a wire pulled tight. The tall woman, the one with the bone crest, stood at the center of the dais. Her voice carried across the hall, in their native tongue, before she turned her sharp gaze to him. Human, she said, in slow, deliberate human speech. You have heard the law. You have heard the truth. Today, you speak your answer. The girl was at his side, as always. She wore a different robe now, deep crimson, edged with gold. Her silver skin seemed to glow under the high window's light. Her posture was straight, but Ethan could feel her arm brushing against his. It wasn't by accident. Ethan took a slow breath. Every eye was on him. Somewhere in the crowd, he caught sight of Jarek, leaning against a pillar with his arms crossed. The older trader gave him the smallest of nods, but there was no hint of a smile. The tall woman waited. So did the crowd. Ethan's mind raced. If he said no, the challenge would come instantly. He'd be fighting in front of all of them, with no guarantee of survival. And even if he survived, he'd walk out into a city where everyone knew he had refused a public claim of humiliation their culture might never forgive. If he said yes, he'd be bound to the girl for life. Her clan would be his, and her enemies would be his too. But she would also stand between him and those enemies. And after what she told him the night before, he wasn't sure he could leave her to face them alone. He turned to look at her. Her eyes met his without flinching. There was no game in them, now no coyness, no teasing, just quiet resolve. You're sure about this? He asked softly. Yes, she said, without hesitation. Even if I make your life harder. Her lips curved faintly, almost a smile. It is already hard. But with you, I live. The tall woman's voice cut through the moment. Your answer? Human. Ethan looked back at the dais, then at the crowd. He thought about the market, about the guards, about the carvings in the chamber below. He thought about how her hand had tightened on his arm yesterday, not like someone making a claim, but like someone holding on to the only solid thing in a storm. Finally, he spoke. "I accept." The reaction was instant. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some voices rose in protest, others in approval. A few warriors turned away in visible frustration, as if a fight had been stolen from them. The tall woman's eyes narrowed, but there was no anger-only calculation. "So be it," she said. "The binding stands. Witnessed by all here." The girl stepped forward, placing her palm against Ethan's cheek. She closed her eyes, leaning in until her forehead rested against his. The hall went silent. A faint, warm scent filled the air, a scent Ethan had noticed in the market but hadn't understood until now. It was hers. When she pulled back, there was the smallest trace of relief in her expression. Then she turned to the crowd and spoke in her language, her voice carrying like a clear bell. Whatever she said made the robed figures nod in approval. The crowd began to shift, the tension easing, replaced by the hum of voices discussing what had just happened. The tall woman approached them both. She looked at Ethan for a long moment. "You have chosen well. Or you have chosen your end. Time will tell." Ethan met her gaze without flinching. "Guess we'll find out." The girl glanced at him, and for the first time, genuine smile broke across her face, small but real. The ceremony ended, and the guards escorted them through the side corridors. Once they were alone, Ethan finally asked, "So, what happens now?" She walked beside him, her steps light but sure. "Now, my enemies will think twice. And you." She glanced sideways at him. "You are no longer alone." He gave a quiet laugh. "Feels like I traded one problem for 100 new ones." Her smile deepened. "Maybe, but you have me." They stepped out into the sunlight of the city, the spires gleaming overhead. People moved aside as they passed, some with respect, some with fear. Ethan noticed it instantly. No one brushed too close. No one dared meet his eyes for too long. The girl noticed too. "See? You are safe now." Ethan wasn't sure safe was the right word. But as she walked beside him, the faint trace of her scent still lingering in the air, he realized something else. Whatever else came next, whether it was protection, danger, or 100 hidden games, he was no longer just another outsider here. He was hers. And by the way, everyone looked at them. They knew it.